Okay, I just want to go over some big issues I'm having personally with the lane swaps. I'm going to try to make this video as short as possible, so I'm going to be talking a bit fast. Main issues I'm seeing, and I think the easiest ones we can start with are level 1 wards. If we're diving the enemy top laner or covering for Josh during these lane swaps, and then just overall being flexible, adapting to the wave states. So, well, I'll get into what that exactly means in a little bit. Level 1 words I want us to think about, have a discussion before the game starts. These are some example questions. Are we starting at level 1? Are we invading immediately when the game starts? You guys are already doing these red buff wards. If we invade their blue buff, which I know we haven't done, but this was taken from Genji versus Hama Life game 4, these seem like the typical 3 wards that they're doing. So let's mimic that for now. If they invade us, can we retake that quadrant? So I'll play this clip out. This is just an example of the discussion that I want you guys to have when we're playing the level 1s.
My cover, I don't
I
have
will
this.
lane. I will lane mid a bit. Just a little bit.
I really
They're
think
gonna invade.
I really think so.
So enemy team invades level 1. I think what a lot of players would do, like they would just drop maybe like 2 deep wards in here. And that's okay, but that doesn't tell us anything about the lane swaps. So let's see what happens.
You wanna fight
I
them?
will ward the rest. I will ward and then we go. Check that. I'm coming.
Or we're fighting this, Ebra can W, I guess.
We
win
lose the
this.
one.
All right, someone needs to raise the discussion or the question of, can we fight them? Or can we at least soft contest them, right? And you'll see in a second.
Tracks.
We win or we lose?
We
We
win.
don't win. We don't win.
I'm fine. I don't die.
They're flashing on
I'm happy
Stylian.
that.
Yeah, we did.
So Johnny no flash.
Yeah, obviously the situation isn't great. Nemesis misplayed and he died when he shouldn't have. But the idea is that we're trying to, stall them out so that we can get some sort of intel, some info on the lanes. We're already too late to be doing like the super deep 3 wards on the opposite side, right? So this is the best thing we can do to gauge how the enemy team is assigning their lanes.
So I got it.
Flash to Johnny.
Don't let them
I'm
base.
Okay, a couple more questions, right? Are we late invading? I think this is pretty good if, the enemy jungler clears super fast, right? Like enemy jungler is Zyra, for example, right? And you want to force the split map. I think late invading is definitely a viable option. Are we dropping some defensive wards, right? Maybe our level 1 is incredibly weak. The mentality, I want you guys to have is we should drop enough wards to gather info, even if we're not invading, so we can understand what the enemy team is doing at least. The main takeaway of the level 1 wards is to scout and see if we can get any intel on the enemy lane assignments so that we can adjust accordingly. Okay. The next topic is diving or covering. Some questions we should ask is Josh playing a carry or a tank? If he's playing a tank, I'm okay isolating him because, well, it's already hard to dive a tank in the first place. If he's playing a carry and we can't dive the enemy top laner, maybe we should cover for Josh, right? And if we can dive the enemy top laner, then maybe we should just trade. But we need to discuss this as a team. All right. Is Richard playing an engage support or an enchanter support? So I really don't think enchanters should cover dives because they need levels and they can poke down the enemy top laner much more effectively. Like a Lulu can poke down the enemy top laner much more effectively than like a Rel or a Leona, right? So it makes it a lot easier for our bot lane and jungler to dive the enemy top laner in that scenario, right? Versus someone like Rel, if we do go for that dive, that enemy top laner is going to be nearly full HP. Something we need to think about. Next question, is Josh getting dove on wave 2 or 4? So the dives are always going to happen on wave 2 or wave 4. So wave 2 happens when the jungler 3 camps and they dive on wave 2, which is what happened this game, for example, right? This is wave 2. This is the wave they're diving on, right? And then wave 4 is if the jungler full clears and then they dive on wave 4. So that's the difference. Wave 4 is more important because it denies the cannon. So that's my perspective. But all the teams we've been playing against, they always dive on wave 2 because I don't know, they're inexperienced or they're not watching enough VODs or they're kind of rushing the play, for example, right? Like this whole sequence that the Zyra did where they level 1 invaded, obviously it worked out for them, but it's because we're experienced, right? But if you look at the grand scheme of things, it's actually not even that good because when the Zyra goes for this dive, she's effectively slowing down her clear. Even the level 1 they invade they did, this is technically slowing down the Zyra's clear because she didn't prep her plants. You know what I mean? So what they did is not even that good. What they should have done is the Zyra should have just full clear top, finished insanely fast, and then they can just dive on wave 4. And that's the best case scenario for blue team here. Anyways, the point I'm trying to make is, yeah, we need to figure out which wave they're diving on, right? And in this game, for example, right, they late invaded us. It is very obvious that they're going to dive on wave 2. There's no way that Zyra's going to clear these camps, go back to her top camps, and then go back and dive, right? She could do that. You're right, she could do that, but it's just not very efficient. But yeah, we need to know which wave Josh is getting dove on so that Richard can base efficiently, right? If he's getting dove on wave 2, Richard needs to start recalling and hit level 2 as he's recalling ASAP. But if they're diving on wave 4, which we haven't seen yet, okay, but this is what all the pro teams are doing. If they're diving on wave 4, then Richard has more time. Okay, and then yeah, obviously we should be asking the same question as well, right? Are we diving on wave 2 or 4? Last question I want us to think about is the enemy support here to cover? So this one is on you, Josh, because in a lane swap, you're the one that has vision of the enemy support at all times. Like this third game, for example, right? We see Nautilus level 1. He ducks in bush. He could still be in the bush, but I would say you should at least call Mia because he could very well be covering the top dive, which is what he does, right? The point is, if you call Mia and there's a chance that the Nautilus comes to cover this dive, then we should not go for this dive, and then Wander should just continue full clearing because it's a waste of time, right? So the impetus is on you, Josh. Okay. These are like the most basic examples, right? First example, super standard, full clear into wave 4 dive, right? So Wanjun, start spot, full clear, full clear, and then we dive on wave 4. Okay. Zarya does the same thing, right? But it's a lot harder to dive the Cassante than the Ambessa. That's the idea, right? And I think obviously, since we're not super coordinated and everything, it might not be exactly on wave 4, right? But just look at the waves, communicate about the waves. We just need to make sure that we're diving as efficiently as possible. So if we're diving on wave 4, that means Max and Richard, you guys can do whatever wave 1 and 2. Just, harass the Ambessa as much as possible. But we should be slow pushing wave 3, and then we'll crash wave 4 in time with Wanju. Okay? That's the idea. The second example is the wave 2 dive. This is what happened to you guys on Saturday, right? They late invade. Zarya takes 1 camp, 2 camp, 3 camp, and they dive Josh on wave 2, like we saw. The third example that we haven't successfully done yet is support recalls in bush to cover dive on either wave 2 or wave 4. He's in late invading here, right? We need to quickly make a determination on whether we can actually dive this Ambessa on wave 2, or if Richard should recall and cover Josh on wave 2. Yeah, and I'd say since Wanjun's start is slower, we should probably already be thinking of Richard covering for Josh instead, right? Because Wanjun's clear is going to be delayed, and then he might not even make this wave 2. Right, and if we're going in with that mentality, then Richard and Max should be more actively hitting the wave. That way, these 3 would be dead. Yeah, we just need Richard to start recalling like as the last melee is dying. So he hits level 2 in bush, and then he's out to cover this dive. And obviously, all of these examples, it depends on champs and conditions, right? Which is why lane swapping looks extremely boring from a spectator POV, but from a team's perspective, if you watch any of the teams communicate, they're communicating constantly because conditions are changing every second. We need to be more adamant about that, and I think lane swaps aren't very fun at the beginning, but this is a great practice opportunity for you guys to work on your comms. Okay, and then the last big issue I'm having is just being more flexible. Everyone needs to be more flexible. Everyone needs to adapt to what's happening in the game. I have a couple examples where we are not thinking about reassigning lanes. We're not thinking about covering lanes that aren't traditionally yours, so we don't drop waves, right? Waves are everything in this game, honestly. For example, I have this Camille game. My first comment for you, Josh, is like, as soon as we see them late invading here, you know you're gonna get lane swapped on. You should consider leveling W or E instead of Q. Like, I don't care about this word at all. You lost your flash, you lost a bit of HP to get like 5 gold or whatever, right? That's just definitely not worth it, right? You could have W or E to outplay this dive. You could have flash to outplay this dive as best as you can, right? The bigger issue I'm having is Josh gets dove here, right? Typical stuff. He's going to TP back. He's going to push out the wave as best as he can, right? But since he's playing Camille has no fucking pushing power, so this wave is pretty hard for him, right? But the point I'm trying to make is, at this stage, Josh, you should already know that it's pretty fucked when their enemy bot lane comes back, right? So we need to calm and think about swapping back, right? And if you look at Max's conditions here, right, like he is down to base pretty soon anyway, right? So I want to talk about swapping back. Max's conditions are better than Ambessa. He can get this wave in, and then he can recall, and then TP or open top, depending on the wave state, right? That's the idea. But we do not want Josh in this lane, because he is just going to get fucked. You understand? Okay. Right? Instead of Max TPing bot here, we could have had him TP top. Richard could have been top as well, right? Because he was literally walking around for the past 30 seconds, right? And then Josh can go bot, where he will have a much better time against this Ambessa instead of Varus Leona. Okay, that's the first example. So the next example is the Ambessa game. Enemy team does the same thing. They late invade. Josh is being lane swapped on again. Same exact thing. They dive on wave 2. Josh outplays it beautifully, magnificently, okay? Great stuff. But same issue is still there, right? We should talk about swapping now, right? Because ball wave is fine. Max is down to go home. Josh is recalling right now. He does not want to stay in this lane against Varus and Rel again, right? This is an opportune moment for both Max and Josh to go home. So this is a great swap opportunity. Okay. Yeah, and I know when Max is playing like Ziggs or Swain, if he's taking TP, we should use the TP to bail Josh out. The TP definitely helps with that, but I'm trying to generalize it to just any ADC, right? If Max is playing Aphelios here with this amount of HP, we should still talk about swapping back because Josh cannot stay in this lane. Do you understand? My last couple comments are for you, Wanjun. They late invaded us, and you go directly to their raptors. But this quadrant of the jungler is going to be yours 100%. You know what I mean? You should just start wolves here because you're just going to slow down your clear. You're going to get all of these camps eventually anyways. The only benefit I see to starting raptors here is if you are trying to dive the Cassante on wave 2. But you're starting late, so it's kind of hard, right? So it's probably going to be wave 3, if anything. Yeah, that's the only justification I can see. So like, obviously it depends on the champs. You think about that. Like if you think you can dive super early, then maybe it's okay to start the raptors. But if you're planning on diving like wave 4, then you should just start your wolves because it's just faster clear for you. Yeah, that's it. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm trying to keep this video as short as possible, so might have missed something.